Hello, everybody. Welcome to the IC Topic Chats for Thursday, June 16th, 2022. We are joined by Juliana Rosa today. She represents now you're going to have to make sure I get this right because it's not up on your screen because I was guessing it. Clover Educational Consulting. Is that right, Juliana?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, and we originally invited her to be a part of our St. Patrick's Day because I mean it's Clover, right? We had to have a Clover, which was fun. But she wasn't available that day, and I said, "Well, I'm going to take a rain check," and I'm really good at collecting on my rain checks. So she said, "Well, how about a book review?" And so she gave me a wonderful list, and I wanted to say yes to all of them and have her on 3 different times, but I thought maybe that might be taking advantage of her time, so I didn't do that. But anyway, Juliana has been a wonderful. She's been wonderful to work with, and I'm really looking forward to her talking to us about this book. So, Juliana, take it away.
Sure. Well, thank you for inviting me. If you would like, I love books and I can talk books for hours. So I might have opened an invitation there. Um, but hi, everybody. I'm Juliana. I'm fairly new to this TIG. I actually worked as an internal evaluator for most of my career for over 13 years, and worked in the office for most of it on site, and then transitioned to working remote during COVID, and then to being fully remote in my new position. And so now I'm more at Clover, an external evaluator, and getting different experiences and trying to figure out what this new normal looks like along with a lot of different people. But realizing too that in the field of evaluation, a lot of folks are already working remotely or from home. And so hoping that we can have some discussions on what's worked really well for you, if that's the case for you, or um, just generating some ideas on how to make it work. So I picked this book. It came out fairly soon after the pandemic. Um, there's so many books now about working from home. It's hard to pick. But this one, I picked it. I was standing at Barnes and Noble. I'm like, there's a giant coffee cup. I absolutely love coffee. I'm going to read it. And so that's how this book ended up on my coffee table. And I think it shared some really good insights into working from home. Let's see here. So, the reason why I picked this topic is really I always like to talk about things that I struggle with and hope to learn more about. And working from home has been quite a struggle. The transition was a struggle with my previous position. Now that I'm fully remote as well and don't have a location right to go to with my current position, I felt a lot like this picture where by the end of the first year of COVID, I wanted to destroy my laptop. And if you are a fan of the movie Office Space, this is where this picture is from, where they are very frustrated with their fax machine. And there's a really great scene where they get together and destroy it out in a field. So I felt very much like that. And so that transition for me was difficult working um, internally, right? And working collaboratively in person. And what does that look like now? I picked this book because it was, other than the coffee mug picture on the front, it covered so many different aspects of working from home. And it's very short. So, really, it didn't go into a lot of depth about each of these things. It talked about rituals and possibilities, setting up your space, from working through online meetings, working with a team and collaborating, as well as if you're working or have kids at home, how to help kids with their education at the time, as well as keeping up your productivity. How do you define success in this environment? How to be high performing and how to engage that if you have staff, as well as looking for jobs in a remote setting. So, as you can tell, there's a lot of topics in this book and very little pages, 160 pages. So, it's very brief in how they talk about things. But I did want to focus on the things that I um, really thought were meaningful for me and important in talking about working from home. Not to say those other things in the context wasn't important in the book, but there are 3 things that I noticed that I would love to spend some time on with you all around how to set up a space that works for you. What are your rituals, routines, and boundaries? And then how do you move forward with meetings and collaboration in a space that is now virtual for a lot of us. And so I'm just curious for those of you who are on the call, if you don't mind raising an icon, a hand, or um, just reacting if you work from home, if that is your primary setting of work. Okay, so a few folks. So, hopefully, this is relevant to you. I do think that it's relevant to everybody as we talk about how we make our work meaningful as well. And then at the end, hopefully, getting some insight from all of you on what has worked well for you. So, the first theme of the book that I found really interesting was rethinking your space, the actual physical space that you're working in. I love this picture. This is a news reporter who was broadcasting live, and this was her living room during the beginning of the pandemic and doing external contracting primarily from home. And so one of the things she mentions is good fences make good neighbors. And I thought that was a really interesting Robert Frost quote that she used for this book, in that sometimes having segmentation is important, a healthy segmentation from your work and everything else that's going on at home, um, or everything else that's going on around you. A dedicated and distinct space where you can spend time really focusing on your reports, analysis, whatever it is that you're focusing on that day, was her biggest recommendation, is to set up a corner in a room or something that's distinctly related to work. And one of the reasons why is because of how our brain works and how our brain becomes more productive as there are transitions and clear segmentation that happens when we are transitioning from one activity to another. That actually having physical space kind of triggers our brain to be a little bit more productive and to refocus on the task that we're about to do. She spent a lot of time too talking about comfort, and this is something I hadn't realized myself, is your health is important in keeping yourself healthy wherever you work, right? So having the things that you need, whether it's a comfortable chair, whether you like to stand, having a standing desk, incorporating movement. I can't do treadmill desks. I've tried, but it's just something to, if it works for you, it might increase your productivity as well as improve your health. And just some startling statistics around how back pain and neck pain has become really a prevalent problem, from folks shifting to working from home and not having the right setup. So really spending time on comfort, surrounding yourself with success, and I added joy because my background is in behavioral health, so I had to add joy as well. Is creating a space that reminds you of success. It reminds you of what's important to you and to help you be productive. And she had a quote in there that I absolutely loved around surrounding yourself with mementos and reminders that reflect your heart, so that your mind can function a little bit more efficiently. So I really um, that quote really meant a lot to me in how I try to set up my space in a way that's meaningful, as well. So this is actually the same picture at a different angle. This is the reporter and how she was reporting live. From just talking on a video chat, you can't really see all the mess that surrounds her. But I just think it's just she did a fabulous idea, at least, or a fabulous job of actually showing herself, but not necessarily the environment she's in. But that environment can really impact your productivity. So. But also when you're talking about, most of us will be meeting virtually with folks still in that virtual space, lots of video conferencing. It's really important to set up certain things to help with your productivity, but as well as with communicating, collaborating with others. So, being eye level to the screen or having your camera level to your eyes was something that she talked about that really helps with that collaboration. The lighting, I moved to the basement finally. I made the shift. I need a space. I'm going to the only room in the basement that's available. So lighting's not great, but lighting is really important to, for your eyes, as well as when you're communicating with others, so you can see cues that are being shared virtually. sound quality, having headphones, and also reducing things around you that are distractions. Not necessarily the cat or the dog that pops in or the kids, but just the clutter or the things that really don't contribute to a healthy work environment. So those were her recommendations in the book. It might not work for everybody, but I just thought it was really interesting. Now, what really struck me with this particular book is rethinking our rituals and boundaries and our routines. Again, transitions are super important for our brain in getting to a space of being able to work. Thanks, great pictures. I absolutely love this picture. I just, for the first half of the pandemic, I was one of these pictures essentially with my pajama pants and a nice top. And then I decided to kind of shift my mindset around that to comfort is important still, but um, having those transitions at work, I would commute to work, and that commute helped me reframe and then be in the moment at work. And then my commute back, I would reframe and be at the moment in the moment with my kids and at home. And that didn't happen when I transitioned from home or from in office to home. And so I had to figure out what's happening. Why am I not able to really separate those two things? And I needed to for my family and for myself. And she talks about transitions, that pre-work transition and ritual is important. Before, you get out of bed, you roll into your conference call. Before that, what can you implement to help your brain transition from rest, from home, from the tasks that you're doing to now being in a different work environment? And also it kind of shifts your mindset a little bit to be more productive, to be more focused. And so something as simple as, I'm sure a lot of you've heard this, making your bed can help with that transition. For me is, since I'm in the basement now, it's actually physically walking down the stairs to my little coffee station where I make my coffee, and that is my transition, and it has helped tremendously. Something so small as that has helped me kind of flip into that mode of, okay, it's time to work, and I have to leave some of those things, other things behind. But one of the things she says too is around energy, not time, is the fundamental currency of high performance. Um, I found, like a lot of other people, there was a statistics from Harvard that showed that people who work from home, especially during the pandemic, were working 3 additional hours than they would have every day at home than they would have at work in the office. And that's pretty startling to me. And I think I fit into that one as well, where the time kind of bleeds together, where you might not take your breaks, you might forget to eat, you just get so focused. And so that power pause, and this is a concept with mindfulness, is taking a pause throughout your day to kind of reflect, do something else, um, to really help the flow and your productivity during the day. And taking care of yourself, making sure that you are getting up for walks if that's what you like enjoy doing, going and getting lunch or whatever it is that you need to take care of yourself, and actually being deliberate about that. Not scheduling meetings over the work hour or the lunch hour, for example, is really important. And so I had to kind of rethink how I was doing that in my space. I do not eat lunch in on my desk anymore because that created a whole different problem where I was checking emails. I was not focused on myself, so I transitioned um, to doing that. So just some little things you can think of, and that power pause can be anything. It could be just drawing if you enjoy drawing. For me, I do what's called jewel art, where I put little jewels on a picture that then create a canvas. Something that's really something that really helps you reset in that moment. And like I mentioned, time works differently sometimes when you're working remotely, when you're not working with others. There's no coworkers next to you or walking in to say, "Hi, it's time for lunch, let's go." And then you'll notice that, at least for me, meetings were just piling up, meeting after meeting after meeting. And so I had to kind of think about, how do you how do you prioritize things? And the author in this book was really clear about being able to shift your calendar or shift your priorities in a way that's meaningful so that you're not stuck in 8 hours worth of meetings in a day, or how many hours That's too many hours for me. It's more than 2 meetings. That's too many. But she added 3 questions that she asks herself when there's a new thing that comes in, a new meeting, a new expectation that I use a lot, and I have found to be very helpful. Is does it have to be right? Do we have to do this? Do we have to have a meeting? Do I have to take on this new project? Whatever the it is, um, I always ask myself that. I also ask myself, does it have to be me? Can it be someone else? And I'm lucky enough to have some staff to work with so we can delegate things and share some responsibility, but that not might not be the case for everybody, right? And it does it have to be me right now? And I think that's the most important question that I found for myself is being able to reframe. Maybe now is not when this needs to happen, and we can reschedule so it doesn't feel um, like it's taking too much time or taking away from me being able to take care of myself or be focused on what I'm doing. I absolutely love, what happened to us. I think it was a BBC reporter, and I believe this was close to the beginning of the pandemic when he was, talking about a really serious topic, and I can't remember what it was now. I think it was related to climate change. And his kids, adorable kids, just walked in, and the look on his face was just so amazing. I still remember that news clip, and here's a picture of that look. I tried to find the best picture I could. Um, but distractions do happen if you do choose to work from home, but also remotely too. If you're working remotely in like a WeWork space, for example, sometimes there could be distractions there. If you're working in a coffee shop, there are distractions, and that's just part of the new normal. And don't get lost in what you can't control, right? The Amazon driver driving past and making all the dogs bark, whatever it is that's happening, it's going to happen regardless, and it's nothing you can really control. So, not getting upset about it and really sometimes even welcoming the distraction. Meetings I've noticed, especially with clients, go really well when my cat seems to pop into the screen as a coworker, and folks really seem to enjoy it. It opens up some conversations, or when my kids come in, and so I've started welcoming some of those distractions. It's really not a distraction, to be honest. It's part of life, um, and it just adds to the conversation. But also communication is key. I find that communication with my partner around, can the kids go out for a little bit while I do this call, or just communication with my team around, there's going to be some distractions. This is going to happen at a certain time. Just being open and honest is really important to kind of move through that awkward stage of distractions especially during meeting calls. And then I think another thing too that she talked about really well with shifting your time and how you prioritize your time is shutting the pantry door, is what she calls it. And we can go to the pantry all day and eat the chips, is what she described. All day in and out of the pantry and eat the chips, but that's not necessarily healthy for us. So we, at some point, you just have to, if you're lucky enough to have a pantry, which I do not, you would shut that pantry door and just say enough is enough. Like today, I've done what I need to do, and I'm not going back to it till tomorrow, or whatever that looks like for you. So establishing also cues that help you end your day, just like if you were going to commute out of the office, really important to be able to, again, transition your mind to what you'll be working on, or maybe it's dinner, maybe it's just playing with your kids, whatever that looks like after your workday is done, is really important. So those rituals, that segmentation, those routines, and setting those boundaries are all things to consider if you're working from home. So. I love that I'm not the only one who has cats who really build rapport in meetings. Yeah, I absolutely love seeing pets too. I think it changes the whole tone of a conversation sometimes. And kids, adorable children. So the last piece I wanted to talk about was around rethinking how we meet, rethinking how we collaborate. There are so many books. I'm actually reading another book about this around leading virtual or remote teams and rethinking collaboration. So, this is just a brief overview of what was talked about in this particular book. But there's a lot of good resources around there, around this. It's this idea that we are base interacting virtually, maybe some of us transitioning to in person as well. But a lot of it's still virtual for me, and I feel that fatigue, especially after 2 meetings. Um, so, some of the suggestions she had was around considering different avenues um, of communication. Does it have to be a virtual um, online meeting? Does it have to be a Zoom meeting, right? Or whatever platform you're using. Can you use other tools like Slack or even a simple chat, a Google chat if you use Google or Hive or whatever other avenue to collaborate with others, with your clients, if you have clients, with your team members, if you have team members, instead of having um, that call face to face. Another thing too is just a traditional phone call can be helpful too. Maybe you can take a phone call while you're going on a walk and you're implementing that wellness piece to your meeting if you can do that, right? Or an email. I have lots of meetings that should have been an email, and you know that after the meeting is over, so you can plan for those things, right? Instead of just automatically scheduling that call. Consider different approaches. The book talks about this really interesting idea of pre recording whatever content you have to share with somebody, whether it's a message, a pre recorded message, or an actual presentation, and not actually holding that presentation live, but holding that Zoom space or that virtual meeting space for discussion or talking about the context for the project. And so that's something I'm going to consider doing with clients is maybe after a report, putting together um, a really simple presentation, recording it with the team, sending it to the client along with the report, perhaps, and then just having a meeting to discuss the deliverables, their thoughts, areas to improve on, things like that. So I'm just trying to figure out how to incorporate that approach because I really like that. Also, meetings don't have to be an hour. I don't know if you all have this struggle too. I always want to schedule a meeting for an hour. It just seems automatic on my calendar, but it doesn't have to be that way. It can be 15-minute meetings can be just as effective if you're able to schedule those and have a really good agenda of what you want to get accomplished during those 15 minutes. And it's less taxing on folks as well. Um, and another thing too is those 3-hour collaborative meetings. I've been in so many meetings where we're talking about strategic plan or goal setting, and it's a whole day meeting or 3 hours. It just doesn't work well anymore. And so separating those meetings into little chunks, into different days, different weeks, really makes more sense now if you're working remotely. This one is the next one is one that's kind of there's a lot of debate on this one, but I am a strong believer that you should give options to folks to not be on camera. I don't know about you, but being on camera can be real stressful sometimes, especially if you're not feeling well or for whatever reason, or you just don't want to be on camera. I like to give folks the option to back out of that, and she also suggested that as well. Things like clear lighting, clear visuals, clear sound really help with collaboration in a meeting. You're not spending the whole time troubleshooting, things go smoothly. It feels more productive. One of the things I'm not doing right now, but I thought was a really interesting concept is looking straight into the camera while you talk. It feels so unnatural to me. But from the receiving end, apparently that can really help with delivering a message. And so I'm going to try that out with my clients and see what they think or how they react to that. And also your background and your visual cues can be distracting to you and to your clients or to the people you're meeting with as well. And so, really being deliberate about what's around you so that it's not overtaxing people. Because visual cues are a big component of why Zoom fatigue occurs. There's just too much going on in everybody's house, in everybody's area. There's a lot to process, and our brains aren't very good at. So. And then one of the things too is not all Zoom settings or all Zoom meetings have to be meetings, right? They can be something different, like online escape rooms or problem solving. So if you're working with a team of folks and you want to see how they problem solve and you don't necessarily want to go into work, there's some really great online options for that now too. Companies that are really thriving around how to build teams and how to Have fun outside of work, but with the people that you work with clients maybe, and also informal meetings. A lot of happy hours were happening, I know, when COVID started. Meetings where people can get together and just talk about themselves and what's going on in their lives. So making space for that, especially if you have staff, is really important. But you can make space for that too with your clients, depending on your relationship with clients as well. So something to think about. It doesn't always have to be about business, and it can still help build those relationships. She had a few ideas around how to have really spectacular meetings, right? Since we have so many of them. One of her ideas was before a meeting, it's always good to have some kind of aim for that meeting and share that with the folks who are involved. And so, not necessarily like a full fledged agenda, because she warned against having too detailed of an agenda, because then people check out, because everything's in the agenda. Why should I attend the meeting? And if I do, I'm checking email or I'm doing something else because everything's already listed, right? So, really being deliberate about your agenda, including like clear things that you want to accomplish, but not giving everything away. So something I'll have to work on because I'm pretty detailed with my agendas. Also, we all have been to exceptional meetings. I hope you all have been to exceptional meetings. I've been to a few and really taking note of why was it so exceptional? Why did it work so well? And copying that in your meetings too is a great way to move forward. She suggested preparing a prompt or a question right in the beginning of the meeting. So engaging those in the call, engaging your clients right away with some questions that can get them thinking, that's relevant to the topic that you're discussing, can really help set the tone for interaction later on as well. And building as much interaction time as possible and limiting your screen share. So I'm not doing a very good job of that today, but one of the things is, less PowerPoint, less screen share, more open, honest conversations and interaction time is really the big recommendation for me. If meetings are large, maybe consider a moderator. By large, it could be 4 to 8 people or more. A moderator can really help keep an eye on the chat, as well as keep things moving slowly, help with technical issues if you're having any of those. Laughing at mishaps and addressing them. It is what it is. It's going to happen. Our platforms aren't always great, and so something to consider. It's okay to have some mishaps. The sound might cut off. You might get kicked out of your meeting, and laughing about it together. One of the things too, I'm sure all of you have participated in meetings where it seemed like the presenter was unprepared, or didn't. It gave out a vibe that they didn't care because they weren't prepared. There's a lot of research showing that now people are preparing even more for meetings in a virtual context, because of just the nature of the virtual world. And so, not winging meetings, being prepared, having a plan for how that meeting is going to go or that collaboration is going to go can be really helpful before going into the I'm using interactive features like the chat, the polls, um, the the emojis, whatever you want to use to get people participating is highly recommended to get people engaged. And then she has what's called the triple D method. Is when you're delivering your message, just make sure that you have a directive again, like that agenda. Where are you headed? Be direct with your messaging and brief as possible, and then be the director for next steps. Right? What do you need to happen next steps? Which then those meeting notes and the next step documents are really critical. So keeping good documentation. And the reason why she says that, and there's research to support this, is that you're more likely to be misunderstood during a virtual meeting or a call than you are if you're talking to people face to face because of the lack of those visual cues. And so, keeping that in mind, having those documents, this is what we discussed, this is who's doing what, here's the next steps, is really important to keep that information, what was conveyed, clear and accurate. So before we move on to the discussion and the transition here, just some things that she talked about too around success from working from home. Really, there isn't a clear model of what successfully working from home looks like or working remotely. Really, it's up to you and how you can make it work. But just some considerations that can help when you're establishing that space or rethinking that space, because it's never too late to rethink how you're working and how you're showing up to the work that you do. She also talked about that success is really learning and being adaptable, and adapting to new situations, right? Pivoting if things aren't working, and continuing to learn what works best. And in a remote situation, that is essential for that success, to be able to work effectively with other people, with other teams, with your clients, whatever that looks like for you. So that's basically some of the tips I thought might be helpful to you, or to you all as you're thinking about your space and how you work. I did have a couple of discussion questions we can go into, but wanted to turn it back over to Matt in case there's anything else that he wanted to add before we jump into that.
I think this is great. And before we get into the discussion, I'll go ahead and stop the recording so we can welcome people back in and they don't have to feel like odd about being on the recording. So goodbye, everybody from YouTube. We'll see you later.